This year, I will chew 117 number 2 pencils.
I will doodle 9 Staples notebooks to death.
When it comes to school supplies, it's guaranteed your kids will go through a lot.
I'll make a whole lot of paper airplanes.
I will lose my backpack.
That's why you get guaranteed savings for back to school at Staples.
I'll give away my last pen to Nathan in math class.
Get guaranteed savings at Staples, and right now, one subject notebooks for just a penny with a $5 purchase. Staples, that was easy. Valid on select SKUs while supplies last. Limit 6. Ends 8/25/12.
Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise, court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Fudge presiding. This is On Trial, brought to you by the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Tonight, I am your defense attorney, Mr. Mark Radulich, and prosecuting Scooby-Doo, Monsters Unleashed, the 2004 American live-action / computer-animated family horror comedy film. At least that's what Wikipedia tells me, is Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
I'm Sean, you're not, and I perpetually look forward to offending you all.
So, this week here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network is entitled Motley Crue and Scooby-Doo 2. Why we put those two together? Why the fuck not? It happened to be because Motley Crue released their biopic on Netflix the 22nd, so we decided to cover that, the soundtrack and the movie, but there was no comic book, to lend itself to, so we gave the other half of the week to some folks that wanted to talk about a comic book that I didn't have any interest in. But it also happened to be after I got back from my spring break cruise. So Jesse and company took on Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, and I thought, what would be fun to do? One of the Scooby-Doo movies. And I figured, the sequels are usually worse than the original. So I kind of picked it cold. I also thought the title of it itself seemed interesting. Seeing as whether you think the movie is bad or good or indifferent, either way, the movie did such they decided to not do a third one and instead of reboot the whole damn thing. Matthew Lillard be damned. But so that's what we're going to put on the docket tonight: Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, and then you can go listen to some Motley Crue and figure out what.
I have to ask, were you as surprised as I am to learn that for all their fame and all the larger-than-life bombast, the Motley Crue have in fact never had a comic book?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I didn't think too much about it. I also didn't look that hard for it either. I have to tell you, the Scooby-Doo source material was on the calendar well before the dirt was. But so here we are. And now, had you seen either of the live-action Scooby-Doo movies before I opted to throw this on the schedule?
You know what? I had seen the first one released in 2002. I saw it in theaters. In fact, that was back when, Alexis and I had been dating for about 2 years at that point. Yeah, I think she dragged me out to that for a date night one evening.
I was going to say, she's a passionate cartoon fan, and, so I'm wondering, did she burn the theater down when it was over?
I wouldn't say burned it down. I think she was decidedly amused. I seem to remember, and I could be wrong about this, and I'd say I'd feel bad if I was, but fuck it, no, I won't. I think she ended up buying it on DVD, actually.
Really?
Like actually paying legitimate dollar dues for it. So I had seen the first one, and for reasons I will kind of get into over the course of the evening, I surprisingly enjoyed it. I had never seen this one though. I just couldn't be arsed. So this is one off the bucket list, and I'm trying to calculate roughly how far down the bucket list see Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed ranked.
Well, we lucked out on this one because sometimes I pick things without really regard for where I can find a copy of the movie. I don't mind paying for them here and there to sort of add to the movie collection in my digital movie collection. And other times it's like, I will rent them because I can't imagine I'm ever going to watch these again. This one turned out it was on Netflix. I was looking for stuff to watch while I was on the cruise. I watched The Get Down, which I really enjoyed, by the way. I highly recommend it if you're at all interested in the late 70s rise of hip-hop, or the DJ culture of the Bronx. But, the Get Down on the 2 seasons of The Get Down on Netflix, I was really into, and I watched because I'd seen commercials of it when I go to the movies. The Tracy Morgan TNT sitcom, I guess you could call it that. The Last OG. I watched that as well, and so I'm flipping around Netflix, downloading stuff to watch on my cruise, and I happen to have noticed. I'm like, holy crap, Scooby-Doo 2's on here. Well, that worked out well. All right, as we've been saying all week, Sean, give me the dirt.
Scooby-Doo 2: Monsters Unleashed is a movie.
Yeah.
It was filmed with cameras. It features actors. Whether or not you wish to count Matthew Lillard in there, reasonable people may differ. That is arguably the most controversial aspect of this movie. Also, if you have ever sat back and asked yourself, other than Guardians of the Galaxy and Slither, what has James Gunn done? Now you know. This is in fact written by the future helmsman of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. It was greenlit pretty damn quickly when the live-action Scooby-Doo kind of blew up bigger than really just about anybody expected at the box office. It didn't draw critical raves, but the thing you have to remember about it is this movie came along at a time when Scooby-Doo was seeing this kind of interesting, bankable revival at Universal among younger audiences. This was around the time when it was kind of being retooled for both TV and direct-to-video movies. It was finding a whole new crowd, and among adults, it was kind of a warmly cherished cult favorite, as much for the giddy, happy Saturday morning memories as for the, obvious, rampant stoner culture reveal. And all things considered, in terms of its box office success, mixed bag. Opened March 26, 2004, and on a $25 million budget, it managed to gross barely its money back. $29.4 million over 3,312 theaters, average of 8,888 during its opening weekend. That was good enough to top the box office. By the time its theatrical run was over, it had grossed a combined $84.2 million in North America and a surprising total $181.5 million internationally, which, believe it or not, was still over $90 million less than the $275.7 million that Scooby-Doo raked in around the world 2 years earlier. It ended 2004 as the 28th most successful film, so it's a slight feather in its cap. 6th highest grossing film featuring a dog as a major character, and when it released in the UK on April 2nd, 2004, it also topped the box office there for the next 3 weekends running before it was eventually dethroned by Kill Bill Volume 2. More recently, if you were to mosey on over to Rotten Tomatoes, film currently holds a rating of 22% based on 117 reviews, averaging 4.3 out of 10. Over on CinemaScore, audiences surprisingly gave the film an A- on an A+ to F scale, which actually ranked it higher than the B+ achieved by its predecessor. Excuse me a second. I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting over a bit of a bug. I will try to mute the mic when I need to cough. But bringing it back around again, full circle to the disappointment, it won a 2004 Razzie for Worst Remake or Sequel. And there it is, guys. That is pretty much the dirt on Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
All right. Full disclosure, I've watched this twice, and watched is a bit of an overstatement.
Twice? Really?
Watched is a bit of an overstatement.
So wait, did you actually watch this while you were on vacation and you were supposed to be having fun?
No, I watched it last night, proceeded to sleep through the whole thing.
Oh,
and
okay.
then took another crack at it today. And now, go ahead.
Yeah, I watched it this afternoon while Carrie was at a work thing and the kiddo was at school. When said kiddo got home, she had a good hearty laugh when I informed her that I had to watch this for a podcast.
Well, I watched it with my son, who will be 5 next month, and he really liked it.
See, in our house, it's a 14-year-old.
Bit of a difference. But the almost 5-year-old and the 8-year-old, I think the 8-year-old gave up on it when I did nod off at one point, and she just gave up trying to keep me awake. But I made it through 90% of this movie awake. The reason why I bring that up is normally I don't read word for word the Wikipedia summary, but I'm kind of have to because, believe it or not, I want to make sure I get to some of the details here, and I'm not kidding when I tell you some of the details of this movie were escaping me. So I don't know what that's.
You know what?
I don't know what that says, but
I don't hold that against you. I'm sure that if you were to put a gun to my head and ask me to recall an in-depth plot analysis right now, I don't think I could come up with a whole lot without probably mixing up things that happened in the first movie and things that happened in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I if I had to, I could kind of bare bones get from point A to point Z, but it would. Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby-Doo attend the opening of an exhibition at the Coulsonian Criminology Museum, commemorating their past solved cases with monster costumes on display. However, the celebrations are interrupted by a masked man known as the Evil Masked Figure, who steals 2 costumes using the reanimated pterodactyl ghost. The gang are ridiculed by journalist Heather Jasper Howe, who starts a smear campaign against them. Concluding an old enemy is the mastermind, the gang revisit old cases, dismissing the former pterodactyl ghost Jonathan Jacobo due to his death during a failed prison escape. They guess that Jeremiah Wilkles, the Black Knight ghost portrayer and Jacobo's cellmate in prison, is the culprit. Going to Wilkles' mansion, the group fall through a trapdoor into a cage targeting unwelcome callers, but escape with the aid of Daphne's cosmetics. Inside, the gang find a book that serves as an instruction manual on how to create monsters. Monsters! Shaggy and Scooby-Doo find a note inviting Wickles to visit the Faw Ghost nightclub. They are attacked by the Black Knight ghost, but escape when Daphne fights him off, while Velma discovers its weak spot. She kicks him in the balls, you understand. Right in the nuts. Before fleeing. The rest of the gang had previously discovered through the book found in Wickles' mansion that the key ingredient to creating monsters was a substance called randomonium. Randomonium. Which can be found at the old silver mining town. Where they mine the randomonium next to the coal. Make America great again. Anyway.
And the unobtainium.
Yes.
And the adamantium.
Yes, and the vibranium. It's all right there in West
Oh
Virginia.
yes, lest we forget the vibranium.
Most important substance on Earth, and they make a frisbee out of it. Anyway. Shout out to you, Ultron. You were gone before your time. Daphne, Velma, and Fred go to the museum accompanied by the curator Patrick Wisely, but discover that the rest of the costumes have been stolen. Heather Jasper Howe turns the city against them. The gang go to the mines, find Wickles' plan to turn it into an amusement park, as you will want to do. As they confront Wickles, he states that he and Jacobo were cellmates who hated each other and that he has no connection to the museum robberies. Shaggy and Scooby, after overhearing the rest of the gang criticizing their tendency to bumble every operation, and especially their most recent offense in failing to secure the pterodactyl ghost at the museum, resolve to better themselves and become real detectives by putting on different clothes. Okay, that last part I added, but that's really what happens. Following the lead from Wickles' note, the first clue ever, they sneak into the Faw ghost wearing disguises to try and solve the mystery. After speaking to Wickles, they hear how he has mended his evil ways. Scooby causes a scene and his disguise falls off, and the two must escape through a trash chute. On their way out, they spot Patrick uncharacteristically assaulting someone who appears to be a member of his staff, ordering him to find answers as to who vandalized the museum. Escaping an awkward interaction with Patrick, Shaggy, and Scooby, spot Wickles leaving the club and follow him. The gang find the Monster Hive, where you always find it, in the swamp, where the costumes are brought to life as real monsters. Shaggy and Scooby play around with the machine's control panel, bringing several costumes to life, and the gang flees with the panel as the evil masked figure terrorizes the city. Escaping to their old high school clubhouse, the gang realize they can reverse the control panel's power by altering its wiring, like you do. Captain Cutler's ghost emerges from the bayou, forcing the gang to head back to the mines. Encountering the various monsters along the way, Velma sees Patrick in the mines, finding a shrine dedicated to Jacobo built by Patrick, but Patrick proves his innocence by helping Velma not fall to her death. The gang confront the evil masked figure as the Tar Monster captures all of them, but Scooby, who uses a fire extinguisher to freeze the Tar Monster's body as if he is Iceman from the X-Men. He reactivates the control panel, transforming the costumes back to normal. The gang takes the evil masked figure to the authorities, unmasking him as Heather. When asked why Heather did what she did, Velma then suddenly pulls and peels Heather's face off, revealing she's actually Jacobo in disguise. Jacobo had survived the fall from the prison wall and sought to get revenge on the sleuths by discrediting them. Jacobo's cameraman, Ned, is also arrested as an accomplice. The sleuths are praised as heroes in Coolsville. In the Fall Ghost, the gang celebrates their victory with reformed criminals. Da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, the prosecution will take the stand.
So let's begin by dispelling one of the classic and really utterly mystifyingly false beliefs about TV to screen adaptations. And that's the idea that these adaptations are just all of them uniformly bad. They're terrible ideas. They should never, ever be attempted. This is not true. It is entirely possible, just as it is with any medium, to take some source material, be it a video game, be it a TV show, comic book, novel, what have you, and put an interesting cinematic spin on it and make it something that's legitimately enjoyable for around 90 minutes to 2 hours. It's been done before. Beverly Hillbillies captured everything that was charming and endearing about the original series. The first Brady Bunch movie lovingly deconstructed the show's most famous cheesy tropes by dragging the family, kind of awkwardly retro, corny motifs and aesthetics and values and all, into a modern setting, and not really trying to change them up, but just having a good old time watching the dissonance with modern trappings and grit. The Dukes of Hazzard perfectly cast. It was an absolute love letter to everything that gave the original show such a cult guilty pleasure staying power. It really was like just a 2 hour, almost a lost 2 hour episode of the original series, just with an age appropriate cast. Get Smart was a shockingly fun, action packed update on the TV series. Addams Family, enough said. If you've seen it, you know every inch why that first movie was such a hit, why it's still beloved today, why it holds up so well. It is everything you could want from 2 hours of a timely cast bringing the Addams family to life. In fact, I would dare say it is probably the standard bearer still for TV to screen adaptations. And allow me to give the 2002 movie ample credit. It was legitimately fun. Much like the Brady Bunch, it deconstructed everything that you kind of hold dear. And it had some fun. It had a certain unique, self-aware fun with the original material's shallow tone by taking it into uncharted waters. It starts the movie off with kind of lovingly taking the piss out of each character's personality by having the gang break up and having them sniping at each other a little bit, and building the entire movie around reconciling them and actually getting them back together. And you can tell watching just about every single scene of it that the cast is just having a grand time bringing these characters to life as four people and a dog that they're sort of out of their comfort zone and out of their time. And it's one of the few positive things that I can also say about this movie, and that is you can tell watching it that each of the actors still really gets what they're trying to do here. And basically they're living it up in pricey-ish studio-funded cosplay as these four meddling kids. They are really just digging in to just being Scooby, Fred, Velma, and Daphne. And by the way, while I'm at it, I also have to give ample credit to Seth Green, because anytime you see the man in anything, he never looks like he is having anything less than the time of his life. Almost no matter what whether he's in Idle Hands or he's Scott Evil or Oz on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if he's whether it's the canceled way too soon Greg the Bunny, he just always looks like there's nowhere else and no other part he would rather be playing. It's kind of the same reason why I love to watch. Guys, get the drinks. Been a while, been a month or so. Get ready to take a drink. The same reason why I love watching The Rock or Rowdy Roddy Piper act in anything. Because even if the material is absolute shit, they're determined to just amuse themselves. That was not just me playing along with the drinking game. That's the fact that my throat is dry right now. But unfortunately for all of that, here's where a sequel, while they knew it would be profitable, was A, unnecessary, and B, ill-advised. Because really, you were never going to come up with a better angle for a Scooby-Doo movie than the way you did the first one. Because it was a fresh take on it. It was a fresh, self-aware, just kind of loving roast of a childhood Saturday morning favorite. And with this one, it feels too often like they're trying to go back to almost that exact same well. Because in this case, you've got the gang that's all together, they're working as a unit, but at the same time, everyone is trying a little bit too hard to develop or advance each character of the gang. Because they're all kind of at various points questioning what their role is in the group and trying to be more like somebody else. Whether you're talking about Scooby and Shaggy deciding that they want to be more serious detectives like Fred and Velma, or Velma deciding that she would really rather emulate Daphne so that she can get the guy. It misses the fact that half the fun of the original show was each character just kind of embracing the stock DNA. You know, you've got the pretty damsel in distress, the kind of homely looking nerd, the stoner and his happy-go-lucky loyal dog, the jerk in the ascot, and it was dependable. It was reliable. You kind of always came back to it, and you knew exactly what to expect. The thing is, when you try to develop each of these a little bit too hard, you veer away from the fun of everything that kind of makes Scooby-Doo Scooby-Doo. And all of a sudden it's going to try to be a little bit too existential at times, as weird as it sounds to attach that adjective to Scooby fucking Doo. In the first movie, when it ended up, you kind of had the notion of everybody kind of becoming okay with who they were, but also realizing, I can still be this, but I can also be this too. But in this, that just kind of gets rammed down everyone's throats to the point where it just becomes utterly joyless, which is sad because it's one of the rare times I can say that that Matthew Lillard has been one of the best parts of a movie he's been in, because he once more is just a total scenery chewing Casey Kasem stand-in. He's another one who is just having an utter blast from start to finish, acting opposite this CGI dog, and all credit where it's due for that. It's got some kind of fun action sequences. The bit with Scooby skateboarding a fire extinguisher around a room and kind of TKOing every classic Scooby-Doo monster he comes across, as they've now all been resurrected. It was out of nowhere. It was batshit nanners. It was basically like watching Yoda do his little goddamn Olympic gymnastics routine all around the room in Attack of the Clones. But, ultimately, like I said, it misses some of the... And again, intelligence and Scooby-Doo should almost never be used in the same sentence. But it misses that self-aware wit that kind of made it so much fun to be in on the joke with the first movie. It's the effects are decent. It was a cool little premise to take all these classic monsters or all these classic costumes, I should say, and have them brought to life as real monsters. That was kind of clever. But otherwise, it's a forgettable, lazy ass cash in that doesn't bother to say, okay, here's this fairly basic material I've been handed. what can I do with this that no one has touched on before? You know, like the Brady Bunch did, or how can I take every? I mean, I guess you could say it kind of tries to modernize a little bit in the style of Dukes of Hazzard or Beverly Hillbillies, but not really enough so that anything lands as being a completely fresh take. So I'm sure this is one that James Gunn would just as soon stay on the shelf for as long as possible. And with that, I turn the floor over to the defense.
So, not every movie is created equal. Not every movie is meant to be a Lord of the Rings theatrical masterpiece. But by the same token, not every movie is The Room. There's a lot of space in between some of the worst movies ever and some of the best. And I get a little... I was talking about this on the review of The Dirt. The idea that... sorry, not the trailer reaction for Toy Story. That's where this came up. Toy Story 4. Which looks like a pile of shit, by the way. That I don't really buy into the idea of, didn't we say all we needed to say with the first? If there's money to be made, go make that money, honey. Go get them dollars. Just tell a decent story. Tell a fun story. Not every movie has to speak to the nature of man, either. Sometimes you put on a movie because you want to be entertained for 90 minutes. As a father of children, sometimes you put on a movie to entertain the children for 90 minutes so that you can get laundry done. Or you can watch an episode of Oz or something, while they're distracted. Whatever your business is. Scooby-Doo 2 is competently made, inoffensive, children's fare. To treat this like it's, like you should be weighing it against terms of endearment or something, that it needs critical analysis, I think misses the point. It's a love letter, to use the phrase that the prosecution had used earlier. It's a love letter to the cartoon. And the cartoon was pretty simple enough. There's a ghost. We have these kids that are investigating the appearance of said ghost. Turns out it's a dude in a costume who had some sort of nefarious plot. It was scaring people off a plot of land, or taking revenge on somebody who had wronged him. Fairly simple stuff. You had your genius, you had your hippie stoner, your comical dog for which the show is named, your damsel in distress, and your hero and an ascot. They were stock characters. The show produced some laughs. Occasionally they bring on a guest star like the Harlem Globetrotters or Batman or Don Knotts. Don Knotts. Like, if you're in the production meeting, you're like, who haven't we gotten on this thing? Who would resonate with the children? Fucking the Apple Dumpling Gang. Let's get the Don Knotts in there. The Harlem Globetrotters. Sure, I get it.
Nowadays, you get whoever WWE can spare for a few weeks.
Yeah. So, with that being said, this was harmless fun. And I'm all about craft. I expect a major motion picture from Hollywood to be made competently, at a minimum. And if you can click that box, you're a winner in my book. That may be a bar too low for people. But again, I'm not looking for art here. I want to turn to make sure my kid is awake and is enjoying himself, and that's good enough for me. Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, I haven't seen the first one yet, but I watched this and I was like, this is a fun idea. This is this is an homage to all the old monsters of the cartoon, and it was a fun take on them. It was like, these were really once costumes, but someone found a way by using magic to animate them. And again, it was right out of the cartoon. There was a revenge plot here. They took it up a notch by doing the double mask thing. It's fun. All harmless fun. All, I think, paying this wasn't the danger with a lot of these movies is that they tend to laugh at the source material. They tend to poke fun at it. They tend to undercut it. This is celebrating the source material, which I think lends itself to the movie's favor. That the producers of this, James Gunn and everything, really took care to say, no, we like Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo is a fun, worthy thing, and we want to do justice by it. And I thought the movie actually does. I didn't look at this and think to myself, as I have with some other movies, like, oh, this is just an excuse to make dick jokes. Or this is taking the piss out of something. No, I just felt like this was a continuation of the same themes, the same fare that you got out of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Now, I talked about competency and craft. The CGI and special effects are a little wonky at times. I mean, that might take some of the Robert Winfrey's amongst you out of the film. Scooby looks animated. He's no Caesar, I'll tell you that much. I don't know, but it was also 2004. I know we've gotten a lot better since then, but they didn't even make him look as realistic as Gollum, for that matter. So I could see someone prosecuting the movie for that aspect. But then again, do you want a super realistic Scooby? This is supposed to elicit childlike enjoyment, and so I think the idea of him being a little cartoonish lends itself properly to the cartoon. As for your live action cast, Matthew Lillard brought Shaggy to life. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that was Casey Kasem. He's excellent. This might be Matthew Lillard's best work. Quite frankly,
you won't get no argument from me on that.
He embodies this character from head to toe, and he looks like he's having a ball. And he's not doing an impression of Shaggy. He's becoming the character, and you got to give credit where credit's due when judging the film and reviewing it. If a character makes you believe and comes to life on screen, that's not something to knock or hold against the film. That's something in favor of it. Same can be said of Linda Cardinelli. Now, I understand that in the cartoon she's supposed to be a homely, genius-type gal. She's not supposed to be a heartthrob, and Linda Cardinelli is hubba hubba. That being
point of order, I'm actually completely fine with her slightly different take on Velma.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I thought she was great. To me, she's the heart of the movie. I think while Matthew Lillard embodies the Shaggy character and is super fun, I think she's the more so than Scooby, who's sort of a side character in his own movie. She really is the heart of this thing. She's its center. She has the best arc, and I'm going to talk about arcs in just a moment. She has one of the best arcs of the whole movie. You have this someone who's supposed to be playing homely and shy and insecure, and she finds her groove. She gets her groove, as it were. By the end of the movie, she finds that inner strength to be herself and enjoy the full fruits of life, love and all. Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we all want? To enjoy some fruit. Anyway, so now she's a very pretty gal. And she does a great job with the character, and I thought she got the finer points of the character down pat. Everything down to the use of the word jinkies. The only two people I had a major problem with, and I think it was a choice on James Gunn's part, and again, having not having seen the first one, I'm not sure if this is more of the same, but I feel like when they were in a writer's room, they were like, we have to come up with something for Fred and Daphne. Otherwise, we're not going to have a movie here because they made, if you're going to cast in 2004 Sarah Michelle Gellar in anything, you have to give her shit to do. So, she can't be the damsel in distress character that Daphne was in the cartoon. She gets to be, Captain Marvel in this. Fine, fuck it, whatever. She does a great job of being the female hero in this. She has zero arc. She's about as flat as can be, but that's fine. What she's supposed to be is, again, the hero character. Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred, he actually has a pretty fun arc in this. He's the typical I've lost in my own fame, and I have to find my way back to my real self again and see what's really important in this world. I was reading some of the reviews, and they were like, "Oh, there's no plot to this. There's no arcs. These characters are flat." And I'm like 3 out of the 5 characters, and again, one of them's an animated dog, have full arcs. Full arcs in this movie. Like, what when structuring a screenplay and coming up with a story, these are the things you want in your characters. I don't know what more you want out of them. So yeah, I thought he did a really good job of portraying that character who has to find his way back to his true self. I talked about the plot already. I really don't have a whole lot more to say. I mean, I thought, like I said, it captured the spirit of the cartoon well enough, and I really was expecting it to be a lot worse. When I picked this, it was the idea of this is going to be so bad, we'll have a lot of fun picking it apart. And I'm like, and I watch this, and I'm like, it's fine. I think that's its crime against humanity. It's just fine. You're a witness.
I actually agree with the point that it's pretty much okay for a movie to be mediocre. For it not necessarily to be something the caliber of Birdemic or The Room, but for it to not necessarily be up to par with Ben-Hur or The Godfather or the first Avengers movie. That's all well and good. I get that. But on the other hand, there's also a certain mentality of anything worth doing is worth trying to do well. And the problem really comes when you look at both movies, you realize that someone as creative and fun and smart as James Gunn wrote both of them. The first movie was surprisingly good, and then you watch this, and it just feels like little more than a retread of exactly what they did in the first one. It's kind of like how you watch all 3 Austin Powers movies, and you've got the first one, surprising hit. You've got the second one, improved on the original, and then you've got the third one, which proceeds for the most part to just go back and just retread the exact same jokes that they've been making for 2 movies now. And looking at a movie and saying, oh, it's for kids, it's not supposed to be brain surgery, that's one thing, but you never want to make that an excuse for laziness. And in a lot of places, this does indeed feel lazy. And which is a shame, because it's, again, the idea of bringing the old costumes to life, it's a nice premise. But the thing is, it comes off at times as looking cheap, as not being quite as on point with a lot of its jokes as the first one was, with sometimes even resorting to just flat out slapstick without necessarily anything smart to underpin it. And it's a waste of a fine effort from all four members of the cast too. Like I said, Linda.
I want to raise an objection to that.
Okay. Your
target audience is young children. You make it too smart, you're going to lose them. I mean, the trick with Pixar. Let me break this down just real quick. The trick with Pixar has been, and why they're a $1 billion company, and they have 9 hits for every 1 miss, is they've figured out the algorithm of balancing something that is equally interesting to adults as it is to children, as opposed to Illumination, which is all lowbrow humor.
Well, you see, I'm both glad and a bit regretful that you kind of brought that up before I was about to get to that.
Oh, sorry.
Because that was my point of kind of bringing it up in general, is the fact that there are so many times when you can make a good movie that's entertaining to kids, but it's also smart enough that the jokes land with adults as well, and they can, if not be outright entertained by it, at least be kind of amused while it's shutting the kids up. Disney, at their best among their animated classics, are often absolutely great about this. My personal favorite being some of Robin Williams' humor in Aladdin.
Sure.
You know, jokes that he was just improvising off the top of his head that might as well have just been culled directly from his stand-up that typical 8 or 9-year-old ain't gonna get. But on the other hand, when it kind of hits dead center with the adults, I mean, they may not be able to care less about the rest of the story, but they were able to go, damn, I love Robin Williams. So it was a little bit of a treat for them, and that was kind of what a few more of the in-jokes in the movie, what balanced them so well, was the fact that you didn't necessarily have to watch the original series and kind of be sort of hip to the subtext to necessarily understand everything that was going on. But if you did, it just kind of enriched the experience. But overall, yes, it's inoffensive. A brief side note, anytime somebody pipes up about a remake or an update of something coming out, you're ruining my childhood. Leave my childhood alone. Stop booty raping my childhood. Okay. If they mention something about feeling like their childhood is being assaulted, assume that person had the worst fucking childhood in the history of childhoods. If somebody making a movie out of a cartoon that you watched, you know, something that number one is meant to be kind of a love letter to that show, but also does not exactly swipe the original completely out of experience. If they say, this is ruining my childhood, do go get fucked. Your childhood sucked. I do not feel sorry for you, nor do I feel sorry for the adult decisions that you now probably should go and sit and feel sorry about. It's an update for a new generation. The source material still exists. It hasn't gone away. Sit the fuck down. Shut the fuck up. This has been a public service announcement from Sean. Anyway, you know, it was an homage. It is what it is. It tried to go the Brady Bunch approach, and in the first movie, it worked. In the second movie, they were clearly out of ideas. So I mean, you know, it's the best way I could kind of describe it would be like if you saw the Eagles original lineup when they were on one of their reunion tours, and they ended their main set by playing Hotel California, and then they come out on stage for the encore. They're all excited and everything, and then they decide that they're going to play Hotel California again, but this time with a mariachi band and kazoos.
First of all, I'm all in.
Okay, fine. Bad example. Let me put this another way. Okay, it would be like if they came out on stage played Hotel California, but they decided they were going to just kind of flip a few verses around, or maybe switch out a key change, or maybe Joe Walsh decided he was going to play it with a completely different model of guitar. Maybe slightly different sound, but it's still the same. It's still the same thing. I stopped short of calling this just overtly, unforgivably bad. It isn't. But on the other hand, if you've seen the first one, you've pretty much seen this one. And with that, I rest my case.
A minor point of contention. The objection I raised was merely to say that doing what Pixar does better than any studio on the planet isn't easy. It's. I would tell you, it's very hard to do. I think this is why a lot of studios, of Blue Sky, DreamWorks, Illumination, all take another tact with their slate of movies, because they still haven't figured out the Pixar formula yet.
Right.
It's not easy. It's not easy to find that sweet point to where you've got content that resonates both equally with adults and kids, and nothing goes over anyone's head. And so,
you know what? Glad you mentioned that, actually, in terms of studios, because one little self-correction I will make. I said this was from Universal. Blame it on a week of cold medicine, guys. It was from Warner Brothers. I remember that because for the longest time, Alexis had a running joke that she would always make whenever one of these movies would be brought up, and it was, Warner Brothers just has two buttons in their office for whenever they're out of ideas: more Batman and more Scooby Doo.
That's funny.
He's not entirely wrong.
I would tell you, as of late, the only ones that I've really seen, just give you an example of I think the struggle here, and this is why I'm very forgiving of a movie like this. Like, I don't need you to speak to me in an equal tone that you speak to my children. This isn't for me. I get it, and I'm okay with that. I remember seeing the Lego Batman movie, which clearly was a children's movie, but the writers treated it like it was a love letter to long-time, fat, bearded, 40-year-old Batman fans.
Yep.
So I'm laughing hysterically, and my wife and kids are looking at me like I'm drunk.
And you know what? This is me kind of taking off the prosecuting attorney persona. The movie is not that bad. It's I wouldn't call it good. Resoundingly mediocre is probably about where it belongs.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, because actually the Lego, Marvel, and DC superhero games are very much the same. Yeah, they're clearly geared towards kids. But man, there are some deep cut references and characters in there.
Yeah.
That I don't think you can appreciate if you're under the age of 22.
Gosh, I can't. There was I feel like in the Batman. Oh, we saw Into the Spider-Verse. Just to give you an example, Into the Spider-Verse was a very layered and rich film. Alicia Pat Mullen, in which case it was a piece of trash.
Absolutely loved it.
And there was a lot about it that I really liked. My daughter's takeaway from it was Spider-Gwen. That's who she glommed onto, and she thought she was the best part of the movie because my daughter is like an 8-year-old feminist. What my son's favorite part of that movie was? The very end, the end credit scene where the two Spider-Men are arguing.
Yep. Well, although, you know what? I think I probably liked that for an entirely different reason than he did, because toward the end of that movie, I was actually becoming... One of my only disappointments was that they at no point injected Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah. So I just bring that up to say, the film speaks to, obviously, different ages differently. And it really does take a deft hand to try to figure out, how to hit all the quadrants equally. It's not an easy feat to do, and a lot of people fail at it, and they don't even try anymore. They kind of like, we're successful with this, let's just stay with it, because we're not successful trying anything else.
Well, and I have to give both these movies credit for something. It's something that I was discussing with Carrie about. We've been discussing it off and on for the past couple of weeks because we both had kind of mutually similar experiences with a couple action movies recently. We went to go see Alita: Battle Angel, which is one of I believe Carrie said it was might have been the first manga she ever read. I, of course, being new to manga and anime, I had never heard of it. She insisted it was great. I had a fantastic time, and I came out of that going, God damn, now I want to go read the books. And I think we had a kind of sort of similar experience maybe on her end when we got out of Captain Marvel. Because, of course, I was familiar with the character because I'm not a comic book aficionado, but by the same token, I'm not completely ignorant of it either. So I was familiar with the character and somewhat of the arc and the origin and everything. She came out pretty damn entertained and impressed by it. I think maybe even enough so that I can maybe talk her into reading, the arc of Carol Danvers ascending from Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel. And that's what a good adaptation like this can do, is it can create enough of an association with fun and the characters that it makes somebody want to go out and check out the old stuff. And I granted, I think the first movie did it better. But that's certainly what I kind of got the sense that Scooby-Doo could kind of do. Is, maybe somebody wouldn't go and want to watch the classic 60s cartoons, but at the very least, it'll maybe kind of nudge them toward wanting to check out some of the fairly successful updated stuff.
My son likes the one with the wrestlers. That being said, I think we are ready to adjourn court and move on to plugs. There's no on trial in the month of April. However, we're dusting off an old classic. We are bringing back Long Road to Ruin.
Yes!
And we're doing this kind of like the old Saturday Night Special, the old logo that was like pink and yellow and it would spin. Something along those lines. Or you might say, like, this is the break in the Saturday Night Live where they would bring you Saturday night's main event. Long Road to Ruin is your new Saturday night's main event. With the Hellboy reboot coming up, we are going to do Long Road to Ruin for the 2004 and 2006, is it? Yeah, 2008, sorry. The 2004 and 2008 Hellboy movies from Guillermo del Toro. So, that's going to be April 18th. We will bring back On Trial on May 9th with the Three Musketeers. This was suggested to us by our good friend Andrew Graham. And then we'll be doing another Long Road to Ruin on May 23rd for the first two John Wick movies.
Sorry.
Why are you whispering sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Carrie is in here kind of relaxing with me for the end of the show, and I kind of accidentally nudged her in a way that kind of triggered her bad back a little bit. So I was saying sorry.
Okay, moving on. So yeah, we'll be doing another Long Road to Ruin for John Wick, and that is because of John Wick 3 Parabellum. In June, we've got a couple of back-to-back on trials. We've got one for Godzilla 1998 with Matthew Broderick. And then we've got one for X-Men 3 The Last Stand. And then I'm retiring this entire podcast because this is the whole reason I started it in the first place. Was I was like, you know what? I want to do Superman Returns and X-Men 3 because I feel like I need to talk about them. And now we're done.
Okay, I'm having a not sure if serious moment there.
No, I'm joking. But a feature-length podcast discussing the merits of X-Men 3 was definitely an impetus for wanting to do this podcast in the first place. So we're finally getting to it. June 13th. July, we've got an on trial for Pulp Fiction. And that's actually August 1st. I take that back. August 1st, on trial, Pulp Fiction. So that takes us up through the summer. Meanwhile, here in the city, like I said, we've got Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, The Dirt soundtrack. We've got some boxing this weekend. Alexander Gravjik versus Dauda Mumbe on ESPN at 9 o'clock. You can join myself, Mr. Toxic Masculinity, Pat Mullen, and the host of Damn You Hollywood, Robert Winfrey, as he will be pantsless and covered in goo after having covered Justin Gaethje versus what's his name? Edson Barboza, which is supposed to be glorious, glorious violence. He's going to join us if he can wake up from his self-induced coma. The following week, we've got Plastic Man on the Lam, Dumbo, and finally, Children of Bodom Hex. And that's before I go see Shazam and then head off to New York for WrestleMania. All right, Sean, what do you got going on in your world?
Well, you know what? For the foreseeable future, this is actually going to be about the only place you guys get to hear from me. I will leave it all up to you to decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I am currently living in the new, actually fairly permanent Fortress of Shamtude in Kansas City, Missouri. However, before I can get back to streaming, we have got a little updating we've got to do with our living room before I can kind of do it up properly the way that I like. So my streaming is going to be anywhere from intermittent to on hold entirely. If you would like to follow me or even subscribe in the meantime, twitch.tv/ComerCodex. I am a variety streamer. I play a pretty wide wealth of stuff. I usually have a single-player game going at a given time, and I kind of mix that in with, when it comes to multiplayer games, particularly Overwatch, Dead by Daylight, and Injustice 2. Although, never know when I might add something else. Never know when I might throw some Warframe in there. Thinking about playing some Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered pretty soon. But, hey, you got time because that's not going to be coming until the end of April. I am on a bit of a social media hiatus, actually. I yanked Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram off my phone because I needed a break from them. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure they're ever coming back. I kid. They will be, but just not anytime soon. So, if you absolutely can't get enough of me, by all means, drop Mark a line. Let him know that you love that saucy Sean Comer goodness, and never know, maybe I can turn up on an episode of Metal Hammer and Doom, maybe source material. Since I'm getting out to more first-run movies lately, maybe even Damn You Hollywood sometime soon. But otherwise, no. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it, and never dull your colors for someone else's canvas.
All right, that's the end of our On Trial podcast for this evening. Thank you for joining us. Be well, be safe. No, it's 2019. We look forward to offending you in the future.
This year, I will chew 117 number 2 pencils.
I will doodle 9 Staples notebooks to death.
When it comes to school supplies, it's guaranteed your kids will go through a lot.
I'll make a whole lot of paper airplanes.
I will lose my backpack.
That's why you get guaranteed savings for back to school at Staples.
I'll give away my last pen to Nathan in math class.
Get guaranteed savings at Staples, and right now, one subject notebooks for just a penny with a $5 purchase. Staples, that was easy. Valid on select SKUs while supplies last. Limit 6, ends 8/25/12.
This year, I will chew 117 number 2 pencils.
I will doodle 9 Staples notebooks to death.
When it comes to school supplies, it's guaranteed your kids will go through a lot.
I'll make a whole lot of paper airplanes.
I will lose my backpack.
That's why you get guaranteed savings for back to school at Staples.
I'll give away my last pen to Nathan in math class.
Get guaranteed savings at Staples, and right now, one subject notebooks for just a penny with a $5 purchase. Staples, that was easy. Valid on select SKUs while supplies last. Limit 6, ends 8/25/12.